Contemporary society is defined by several striking features, most prominently by unprecedented technological and scientific breakthroughs, alongside the rise of capitalism, hedonism, and a profound focus on the individual. We currently enjoy far greater wealth, safety, and comfort than any previous generation, with unprecedented access to nourishment and essential resources. Yet, this progress begs a crucial question. Why are we witnessing such a dramatic surge in psychological distress? A substantial body of evidence indicates that a major proliferation of severe mental instability emerged during the 19th century, largely driven by an influx of individuals suffering from the condition we now identify as schizophrenia. A profoundly influential characteristic of the modern era is its relentless fixation on the autonomy and significance of the personal self. Rather than seeking truth within an objective external universe, you are encouraged to gaze inward, cultivating a hyper-awareness of your own internal processes and subjective experiences. By the 19th century, this introspective shift had fundamentally transformed how humanity perceived itself, resulting in a Western culture dominated by relativism and the emergence of the psychological man, a new archetype utterly consumed by the desire to master his own mind. To truly understand psychological suffering today, you must examine it through the lens of our contemporary societal framework, acknowledging how secularization, bureaucracy, and relentless technological advancement impact our daily lives. Navigating the highly rationalized structures of the modern world involves dealing with complex, often contradictory environments that demand incredibly exhausting cognitive effort. While cultural narratives champion your unique individuality, you are simultaneously forced to conform to the ever-shifting demands of a rigid society. And the inevitable clash between these two pressures frequently creates a profound sense of psychological fracturing. In his seminal work, The Myth of Mental Illness, psychiatrist Thomas Szasz fiercely critiques the medical establishment for treating disruptive or unconventional behaviors as literal diseases, often lumping them under the broad diagnostic umbrella of schizophrenia. He famously observed that if you speak to God, society calls it prayer, but if God speaks to you, they diagnose you with schizophrenia. Similarly, communicating with the deceased makes you a spiritualist, while having the deceased speak to you makes you schizophrenic. Ultimately, Szasz argues that while unsettling thoughts and actions certainly exist, classifying them as medical pathologies is a fundamental mistake because, unlike physical ailments, psychological disorders are defined by deviations from established ethical, legal, or social standards. Breaking these norms is not the symptom of a biological infection, but rather a chaotic attempt to navigate the profound difficulties of simply being alive, and labeling these struggles as clinical diseases only obscures the genuine existential crises people are enduring. As your comprehension of the universe expands, you begin to realize that you possess the ultimate authority to chart your own course, carrying the heavy obligation of personal responsibility along with it. The philosopher Jean-Paul Sartre captured this perfectly when he declared that we are entirely condemned to be free, forced to carry the crushing weight of our own choices without the comfort of passing the blame to anyone else. You must accept full accountability for your path, because your consciousness cannot be anchored to another person without fundamentally betraying the core of your own existence. While you can certainly seek out guidance and listen to the perspectives of others, the ultimate burden of every decision rests squarely and inescapably on your shoulders. For many people, the sheer magnitude of this boundless liberty proves to be terrifying and entirely overwhelming. The philosopher Søren Kierkegaard proposed that you face two major existential traps. You might become paralyzed by the infinite, constantly analyzing endless possibilities without ever taking action. Or you might surrender entirely to the finite, reducing yourself to a mere cog in the societal machine. This second trap results in the despair of finitude, a condition closely resembling what modern psychiatry labels as depressive psychosis, where you lose the capacity to imagine an alternative future remaining hopelessly bound to meaningless obligations, as if you were merely existing in a state of living death. Inevitably, you will crash into the fundamental question of your own existence, perfectly illustrated by Albert Camus when he described the mind-numbing rhythm of modern life. Waking, commuting, working for hours, eating, sleeping, and repeating the identical cycle day after day. This mechanical routine is easy enough to sustain for years, but eventually, a day arrives when the lingering mystery of your purpose surfaces, triggering a profound exhaustion, heavily mixed with astonishment. The absurd hero, according to Camus, is the individual who suddenly recognizes the hollow repetition of reality, fully embracing our shared Sisyphean fate, where we must endlessly push our respective boulders up the hill, only to watch them tumble back down. If your daily actions fail to provide a compelling reason to exist, you are forced to desperately seek out new meaning, or else plunge headfirst into a paralyzing existential crisis that can ultimately lead to total self-destruction. A monumental turning point in Western history occurred during the Age of Enlightenment in the 18th century, an intellectual revolution that systematically dismantled the religious foundations upon which society had always relied. This dramatic ideological shift triggered massive psychological and cultural shockwaves that continue to echo today, abandoning countless individuals to face a severe crisis of meaning as they desperately struggle to find purpose in a universe stripped of inherent design. In the past, humanity possessed clear guidelines regarding how to navigate our days and comprehend our ultimate destiny, firmly anchored by the religious conviction that you were participating in a sacred, grand design. Today, however, you are gradually enduring the profound fallout of the cultural shift that Nietzsche famously diagnosed as the death of God. As the philosopher astutely warned, the sheer magnitude of this realization remains largely unacknowledged by the masses. Observing that this monumental occurrence continues to drift toward us, remaining farther away than the most remote celestial bodies, despite being a crisis of our own making. Consequently, you find yourself cornered by the chilling inquiry of whether our being holds any true significance whatsoever, leaving contemporary society profoundly adrift and paralyzed by an inability to chart a purposeful path forward. Viktor Frankl stands out as a prominent thinker who sought to address this pervasive spiritual emergency and the ensuing psychological distress brought about by an absence of purpose. You are currently marooned within a void of significance, where the widespread neurotic tendencies of our era serve as a silent, desperate plea for a reason to keep going. The renowned psychiatrist argued that this very struggle to face the emptiness is responsible for the dramatic surge in contemporary psychological ailments. He explicitly cautioned that pervasive societal issues such as addictive behaviors, violent outbursts, and deep melancholy cannot be truly comprehended unless you acknowledge the profound emptiness that fuels them from beneath. To alleviate these debilitating conditions, Frankl's clinical approach involves guiding the individual back toward discovering a genuine reason for their being. The objective is to encourage you to directly engage with the enigma of your own significance, to thoroughly investigate this dilemma, and eventually construct an affirming resolution. Uncovering a personal calling must never be mistaken for a mere intellectual luxury pursued only after basic survival requirements are satisfied. Rather, the relentless drive to secure a foundational reason for being constitutes the most essential catalyst for human action. Deprived of a central driving force, every hardship you endure and every ambition you pursue ultimately dissolves into pointlessness. It is exactly this crushing sensation of uselessness that Frankl identifies as the root of dependency, hostility, and despair, noting that absolutely nothing equips you to endure horrific adversity quite like the certainty that your existence carries weight. The psychiatrist elegantly summarizes this dynamic by explaining that reality interrogates every individual, and the only valid way you can reply is by taking complete ownership of your personal journey through absolute accountability. Because of this immense burden of responsibility, contemporary individuals desperately require a heroic narrative to guide them. Within the pages of the work Man and His Symbols, the Jungian analyst Joseph Henderson highlights how the legend of the champion serves as a crucial, globally shared archetype. This protagonist inevitably plunges into the abyss to defeat a monstrous serpent, save an endangered captive, and secure a hidden prize. While the protagonist may initially exhibit vulnerability, this fragility is offset by the arrival of powerful protectors who empower you to conquer obstacles that would be insurmountable alone. These mentors serve to forge your innate talents and fortify your vulnerabilities, preparing you for the grueling trials that reality will inevitably present, a dynamic closely mirroring the reliance you once had on your caregivers. You truly pass your foundational trial and step into authentic adulthood only when you achieve self-sufficiency and face the universe entirely on your own terms. In his profound text, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Carl Jung documented his compelling quest to understand the precise internal experiences of those suffering from severe psychological afflictions. He maintained that genuine healing commences exclusively after uncovering a deeply private narrative, viewing this concealed truth as the very obstacle upon which the sufferer breaks, and the singular key required for successful intervention. Jung asserted that analyzing surface-level thoughts is rarely adequate. Clinicians must address the entire individual rather than isolated symptoms, asking provocative questions that test the very core of your character. By applying this holistic method, he managed to treat numerous individuals diagnosed with schizophrenia, a demographic previously dismissed as utterly untreatable by the medical establishment. The core contradiction of this ailment lies in the simultaneous erasing of your identity within the environment and the collapsing of the environment into your psyche, creating a confusing blend of endless torment and godlike power. Those afflicted frequently question the authorship of their own mental processes, fearing that the tangible universe is merely a sequence of hallucinations engineered by malicious actors, leading to the ultimate paradox of feeling simultaneously supreme and utterly insignificant. Contrary to prevailing medical consensus, Jung discovered that a significant portion of individuals labeled as schizophrenic were actually battling severe, conventional despair, rooted in deeply buried traumatic events and agonizing past tribulations. He recounted the tragic case of an 18-year-old female who suffered horrific violations 3 years prior, prompting her to withdraw completely into solitude and hide from human contact. After being committed to a psychiatric facility, she languished in an unresponsive, catatonic stupor for an extended period. Over a span of several weeks, the persistent doctor managed to gently coax her out of her silence, slowly dismantling her formidable emotional defenses. Eventually, she confessed to him that she had mentally relocated to the lunar surface, rejecting earthly existence because she found the moon vastly superior and overflowing with profound significance. Jung deduced that the horrific abuse she endured left her feeling profoundly degraded in reality, prompting her psyche to elevate her into an imagined cosmic realm to escape the trauma. This total detachment from humanity resulted in severe psychosis, launching her into deep space, where she encountered a monstrous entity. Yet, by sharing her secret with the doctor, she broke her allegiance to this hallucination and reconnected with a mortal confidant. This breakthrough fundamentally altered his perception of psychological agony, granting him a profound appreciation for the complexity and immense value of our internal landscapes. Echoing this vital need for psychological grounding, the author Sebastian Junger proposes in his publication Tribe that humanity has always harbored an intense evolutionary drive to integrate into tight-knit communities. For millennia, These intimate social structures have provided you with a clear sense of direction and a cohesive framework for interpreting the world around you. In our contemporary world, the profound communal bonds that once defined humanity have been thoroughly dismantled. When European colonists were captured and integrated into Native American communities during early frontier conflicts, a fascinating phenomenon occurred. Given the opportunity to reintegrate into their European settlements, a significant number of these captives completely rejected their former lives, actively choosing the indigenous way of life over their so-called civilized existence. Conversely, there is absolutely no record of an indigenous person voluntarily abandoning their community to assimilate into the settlers' culture. From a biological standpoint, your survival mechanisms are entirely predicated on existing within a mutually reliant collective. Within these traditional structures, a natural egalitarianism emerges, simply because every single individual performs a vital function necessary for the group's continuation. To sustain themselves, these communities dedicate merely 12 hours a week to essential labor, standing in stark contrast to the grueling 40-hour schedules demanded by typical Western economies. Daily life revolves around a shared mission of sustenance, where hunting and foraging efforts are pooled together, culminating in a communal distribution of the day's harvest every evening. A prevailing myth suggests that technological advancements have granted you an abundance of free time, yet reality demonstrates precisely the reverse. Today's existence is largely defined by a relentless treadmill of professional labor and financial burdens, effectively stripping away true autonomy. While defenders of contemporary living might point out that it offers a degree of personal independence entirely foreign to our ancestors, this newfound autonomy carries a heavy cost. This very same individualism frequently mutates into profound psychological isolation, plunging many into deep states of melancholy and detachment. Your physical form remains completely out of sync with your current surroundings, as the monumental shifts brought about by farming and industrialization have barely registered within our collective genetic makeup. Despite navigating highly sophisticated urban landscapes, your fundamental neurological wiring remains identical to that of an ancient hunter-gatherer. Consequently, you can find yourself trapped in a bustling metropolis, surrounded by thousands of individuals, yet suffer from an agonizing sense of total isolation. Such profound loneliness is a remarkably recent historical development, completely alien to your innate need for a community that actively recognizes and values your contributions. When deprived of this tribal validation, you rapidly descend into existential despair. The renowned sociologist Emil Durkheim made a fascinating observation regarding how armed conflicts, paradoxically, improve collective psychological well-being. During these periods of extreme crisis, incidents of self-harm, murder, and psychiatric institutionalizations experience a dramatic decline. Similar patterns emerge during catastrophic environmental events, where individuals spontaneously redirect their focus away from personal preservation and toward the immediate needs of their neighbors. Extreme hardship effectively acts as a catalyst for altruism, forcing populations to temporarily resurrect ancient, unified modes of survival, thereby counteracting the comfortable selfishness and fractured relationships that define your heavily modernized, isolated existence. The escalating epidemic of psychological distress today is a direct symptom of this missing communal foundation, a critical support network that your tribal predecessors naturally maintained. You stand to gain immense wisdom by studying the social cohesion of those who came before us. The prominent psychologist, Carl Jung, articulated this fragility perfectly, noting that humanity itself is the greatest threat to global stability, yet we remain dangerously ignorant of our own minds. He cautioned that our over-reliance on pure logic has severed your vital connection to primal intuition, resulting in a widespread, disastrous fragmentation within the collective psyche of the modern world. Elaborating on this crisis, Jung observed that unimaginable horrors shattered the seemingly peaceful illusion of the early 20th century, leaving human civilization trapped in an ongoing state of profound psychological division. He argued that your intense focus on logical reasoning has completely eroded your ability to connect with profound, mystical symbols, paradoxically, leaving you entirely vulnerable to the chaotic depths of your own subconscious. While contemporary individuals mistakenly believe they've simply discarded outdated superstitions, they've actually discarded essential spiritual anchors, reaching a level of emptiness that is actively perilous. Because these foundational moral traditions have collapsed, society is currently suffering the severe consequences, manifesting as a pervasive, global sense of confusion and psychological fracture. Although your current environment appears outwardly purged of illogical beliefs and mystical practices, an honest examination of your mental architecture reveals that ancient, instinctual drives continue to operate exactly as they did millennia ago. You experience a profound cosmic loneliness precisely because your intrinsic, harmonious connection with the natural world has been severed. When traditional cultures are forcibly subjected to the steamroller of industrial progress, their inhabitants suffer a complete collapse of purpose. Their societal structures crumble, and their ethical frameworks dissolve. The cultural theorist Ernest Becker highlighted this phenomenon, noting that when indigenous groups are robbed of their cultural significance, they often cease procreating, or even inexplicably succumb to death amidst abundant resources, proving that human beings require far more than mere caloric sustenance to survive. In stark contrast to our ancestors, you have completely forfeited that deep, spiritual engagement with the surrounding ecosystems, animals, and forests. While humanity has undeniably conquered the physical realities of the external environment, your internal emotional landscape remains incredibly fragile and disjointed. The classic literary tale of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde serves as a brilliant allegory for this contemporary psychological schism. However, within that narrative, the protagonist's divided nature manifests as a literal biological transformation, whereas in your daily life, this profound split occurs entirely within the hidden confines of the mind. Jung further clarified this internal chaos, pointing out how frequently you are hijacked by shifting emotional states, acting irrationally, or suffering sudden blind spots regarding your own identity and relationships. Although society constantly boasts about possessing willpower, genuine psychological mastery is an exceptionally uncommon trait. He drew a sharp distinction between intentionally suppressing a specific urge, a hallmark of mature restraint, and the terrifying, involuntary fragmentation of the mind that occurs entirely without your permission, which essentially functions as the root cause of severe mental illness. To repair this internal devastation, it is recommended that you actively investigate your hidden mental depths through dedicated introspection and the careful analysis of your dreams, ultimately accepting that powerful, independent forces reside within you that operate entirely outside your conscious command. Within this profound internal landscape, humanity uncovers the essential wisdom necessary to navigate existence, while simultaneously safeguarding the ancient, fundamental elements of our ancestral cognition, known as archetypes. Regardless of our vast individual variations, every human being inherits a collective unconscious, which acts as a shared mental foundation that seamlessly molds itself to fit the unique circumstances of your personal journey. For far too long, society has been overwhelmingly consumed by analyzing our conscious intellect, tragically overlooking the profound question of how our own hidden psychological depths might actually perceive us. I sincerely trust that this exploration into the hidden layers of the mind has provided you with genuine value and fresh perspectives. To continue uncovering the intricate mysteries of human psychology, be sure to stay engaged with our upcoming discussions on these profound topics. I deeply appreciate your time and attention today as we navigated these complex ideas together.